Hello and welcome to ThisConnect. Today we are discussing how you assess whether you're a good driver or rider or not, and hopefully a few things that you can do without having to go to a school or go to a racetrack to keep improving on those ideas. Are you a good driver?
Hey, I was supposed to ask you that.
Okay, ask me that.
Are you a good driver?
I am.
Are you a good rider?
Yes.
Awesome. How do you know that?
There are two or three things in here. Okay, first, I think it is fundamental that everybody believes that they are a good driver, and good being confident, good being comfortable, and good being a lack of incidents, near misses, and things to worry about. If you have a lot of this happening with you, I think we're fundamentally a good driver. To me, most people should think they're a good driver natively because it gives them more confidence, and confident people operate machinery better. So I would just rather not have you think of yourself as a terrible driver unless all the signs are that you are a terrible driver. And those signs are usually pretty obvious.
Very obvious.
So what do you think are the signs of a terrible driver?
I think they're the small, simple things, right? You'll see them coming on as small things, right? Like light bumps and scrapes, or just not being as caring and attentive to others or things around you, right? You'll see it in terms of people's comfort with you if they're traveling with you or around you. Like if you're on a motorcycle, your pillions should feel at ease. If you're in a car, the other people in the car should feel at ease. And if you're riding with other people, you'll always know if there are more experienced riders with you, if they're giving you too wide a berth, right? You know that you're not being good enough,
Yeah.
right? And like we were discussing earlier, good for me is a tricky word, right? Because it kind of is a on-off switch. Because I'm good, right? I'm a good rider. I'm a good driver. The word I told you was that the word that I think about is, do I feel comfortable? And the second I bring that in is because it's situational, right? Because how we are as drivers and riders will change by situation, will change with vehicle, right?
Yeah.
So that comfort angle, is something that we constantly stress on. And I want to bring up again because there'll be a lot of motorcyclists, and this point came up from a lot of motorcyclists saying, how do I actually know I'm a good driver or a good rider, right? Always think a new situation, I don't know anything about it, and I will not be good at it, right? The first time out. So when we are testing bikes specifically, right? So when we are testing like ABS, it's not like you want it to be tested when you are not prepared for it, correct? So we'll go find a situation like typically an empty road where there's a little bit of gravel towards the edges, right? And you'll go run into that gravel at lower speeds and gradually build that up.
Correct.
So that you get a feel for it. So which is why comfort for me is an important factor, that you have to build it up. And we as riders, drivers, our skill is going to keep changing, right?
Yeah.
And preferably
Hopefully going upwards. Yeah.
go up, right? So in everything, situationally, you have to build that comfort level. When you're traveling with a pillion on a motorcycle for long distances, that's something new. It involves two people. You have to build that knowledge and comfort of how it works. How Shumi talks about touring on his own, that's because he spent so much time doing it that he has it broken down into a science.
And also, you remember that the signs of you're doing well or badly are very obvious. You just have to pay attention to it. Okay, I'll tell you the first time I left Mumbai. I had tested motorcycles outside before, but this is the first time I actually took a motorcycle and said, I'll go somewhere. No agenda, no story, just go.
Do you remember which bike?
I think a Pulsar 180 or something, which was a long-term bike or
And
whatever.
where were you going? Sorry.
I don't remember now. But I remember leaving towards the Pune side. So I was going on that. I had an incident on the first flyover. I was in the wrong place at the wrong time. There was a bus coming at me and I avoided that incident. What that incident immediately said to me was, your mindset for touring has not arrived yet. Today. Not like generally, but today. You're not thinking about you're out on the highway and you're going to be here for another 230, 40, 50 kilometers. You're still thinking like a city rider. And the city rider mentality is, I'll pass that car, I'll get there quickly. But it's 300 kilometers. What would you gain or lose by not passing the guy who's annoying you in front of? What would have changed? And therefore, I discovered over time slowly that being more patient on the highway pays back. Being that kind of patient in the city isn't always possible or helpful. There's a fundamental difference to it, right? But that sign was there. I could have said, it's a one-off. right? That bus was in the wrong place. I was not in the wrong place. The bus was in the wrong place. Then that I would have just not read that sign. But have I made that mistake again? No. So when I leave city, I'm going testing. It's a very clean mindset. I have to go to this place, find that situation that he wants for that kind of testing to happen, then do those things. And when I'm done, then I'm done. I'm not persisting with it. So let's say that I ride a motorcycle, say 800 kilometers for testing. I'm not testing it for all 800 kilometers. I am trying to reach a certain number of conclusions. Then I will validate those conclusions a bunch of times and then I'm done. The rest of the time I'm riding as well as I can. But when I'm going touring and I'm going to be on the bike for 5, 6, 8, 10 hours, my mindset is completely different. I'm not testing anything. I'm not trying anything new. I'm trying the basic set of good skills that I know work for me, avoiding the situations which I know are terrible situations and getting through it. Which means known roads is a good situation to be. I can go a little bit quicker because I know what's going to happen. Unknown roads have to go a heck of a lot slower because I don't know what's going on.
Correct.
Right? So to me, the signs that you're doing badly, I think, are there. And a lot of people just don't pay attention to them because they're externalizing blame and saying, "Ye meri galti nahi hai. Somebody else did something, so I got into that situation." What you contributed to get there is something that is non-obvious. And to me, people who improve constantly and people who consider themselves good will always pay attention to their contribution to their incident.
So I'm going to give you a very hard example about this, about taking responsibility. There was this Indie Motor track day, Shumi and I were there, and we'd ridden down from Pune and all of that. So at the school, I was doing sessions, and Shumi told me to take the the toner, right? So I took it out for a spin, and I was obviously nervous about riding the bike. And because it's his bike, it's somebody else's bike, so you have to be extra careful and all of that. And it's a wild bike, so you also have the temptation of let's do a little bit more, right? So I think it was the second lap. I'd done 2 laps, and I was getting into a rhythm, and into the third lap, and one of my favorite corners at Curry, I don't know the numbers and whatever.
9.
Number 9. So it's a left, really fast, superb corner. Love it, and I've not even gotten into the entry of the corner. I'm just going there and the bike goes out from under me, right? So it was gone. His bike was, luckily it had crash bobbins and all that. So it wasn't seriously damaged, but it went, down the tarmac, and I was just shocked. I was just like, how the hell could you do this? And all of that, right? So I was obviously blaming myself. And just as I picked up the bike and I rode into the pit lane, on the way it had rained the day before, so there were little patches of water here and there. So, and I saw in the water, I saw a rainbow, right? So my first thought was like, shit, that's oil. And then my light kind of went on and I started looking at the road and there was streaks of oil, right? Now, it so happened that somebody else had fallen in the corner before that and had damaged the engine casing, not realizing that the casing is damaged. It leaked oil onto the track, and we went in and he went into the pit lane after that, but that oil was there, and that's what I hate. So did I really have control over the situation of what happened over there? No, I did not. But by saying that it's not my fault, and this was a learning for me, right? For tracks next time, this will be a reflex for me automatically, because I could have been more careful, right? For instance, the lap before, I had seen somebody out there in that corner.
Correct.
Right? I did not think much about it. I just saw somebody had gone off. And that was it. It was, because it had rained, it was slushy and all of that, right? So I just did my lap, went through. The next lap, there was nobody there in that corner. So it was okay, fine. You don't have to be so careful. But I should have been careful to check.
Correct.
Are the conditions okay? That person could have gotten mud because it was slushy, which would have made things difficult for me. Could have made it, right? So it is for me, and I will take responsibility for that I should have been more careful, right?
Correct. And I think the flaw in the argument, this happened on the Crash Test podcast also, is it's very easy to blame the other guy. And maybe they are to blame and maybe they are not. That's not the issue here. I'm again saying it's not who did what. It's what could you have done that contributed or could have saved you from that situation, which is important, productive and useful. I have never had a near miss without wondering, what did I do?
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter who did what. I have to ask the question, what did I do, so that I can fix that for next time. Right? I remember the first time this happened is I think I was crossing lanes on the RD350 and it came onto the power band while the front wheel was in the dry and the rear wheel was in the wet because there were 2 lanes. So there was a moment where I was going sideways across lanes. I logged that incident, saying, okay, this RD350, because it has a power band, we have to be super cautious. A few days later, same place, I moved out safely into the next lane, but I hadn't seen what was in the lane before I opened the throttle, and it came on the pipe and there was a wheelbarrow there. No traffic on my left, avoided. But that day was the last day I opened the throttle. Before I change the lane, I will not open the throttle. I will first validate that that lane is open and then use the performance of the motorcycle to complete the overtake. I have never come out with an open throttle from behind a vehicle if I don't have visibility. Okay, back in the day, I would say I did it 2 times before I realized this was a mistake. Now I would work towards making it one mistake and I'm done with that. I will never do that thing again. Right? And when you have a 100cc bike or a 100cc scooter and you're struggling to make an overtake, I can still understand the charm of opening the throttle and then starting on your overtake. I get it. But you have fast 400cc bike today, the average bike, even a Royal Enfield with only torque and no real horsepower. These overtakes happen so quickly. You don't need to play this game. But I wouldn't have learned this if I had blamed saying road gila tha, meri galti nahi thi. And then blamed the wheelbarrow guy saying, look, this was in Delhi, so these NDMC guys can't even do gardening properly without, leaving things in the middle of the road. If I just externalized the blame, I wouldn't have learned anything from it. And by now I would have gone to the back of something in the middle of a stupid overtake.
I think somewhere I know a lot of people don't agree with this, but I will always take responsibility for something that happened while I was in or on the vehicle.
Yeah.
Right? Even though it may not be my fault, but there's always something to learn. And the second you pass it off as saying that it was not my fault, means basically you've stopped processing that event, as it were.
Correct.
And just said that, yeah, I'm in the clear. That's not the idea. It's happened. There's always something that you can get out of it so that you are better the next time around.
Correct. There is a legal angle to this, okay? You don't want to admit fault because that can be held in court against you if that thing becomes a legal issue. Okay, so I'm not saying publicly go and apologize saying, no, that's not the issue here. The issue is internally there should be a realization saying, okay, maybe I did this and this and this and the combination of these 3 leads me to this situation which I do not want to be in. So the next time I'm not going to do this. What you should do post crash, help everybody who needs help. Unequivocally you should. Do not say sorry or admit fault primarily because that can be taken to court against you saying you apologize so you admitted blame. It's very unfortunate, but it is true and a policeman told me this. There was a crash that I was in.
I remember you saying.
Yeah, and the first thing he said is, I see that you went to the other person and said sorry and you took care of them and you made sure everybody was okay and that's very nice of you, but that was also stupid. How stupid? How? He says, if they were to go to court with this,
taken responsibility.
They will basically, their lawyer will say, but he said sorry and therefore he admitted blame and took responsibility for the crash. So now all of the charges, etc., all accrue to him. Whether it was my fault or not is not the issue. I have disadvantaged myself by apologizing. He's saying you have to just keep your mouth shut and help everybody like you did anyway.
Got it.
Okay. So to me, the core of good driving and good riding comes from a lack of incidents, 1, and 2, a lot of introspection about what have you just done? How would you improve this? Or if you've had a near miss or a small scrape, how would you avoid this? And over time, you should see a trend of it disappearing. Right? All of us, when we were learning, have had small incidents here and there where we misjudged something. Like I remember when I was learning how to ride a cycle, my house in Delhi, the gate was much narrower than the road. And I'm trying to go as fast to that gate as possible. So I made the mistake of not calculating the trajectory once to the point where I had to basically push the gate away from me.
Oh, shucks.
Because I'd gone wide into the gate, right? So when you push the gate away from you, what do you think the bicycle does? It goes right the other way, right? So I crashed into the other gate. Okay? So trying to avoid this one, I hit this one. And then I'm sitting there on the ground wondering, how the hell did that happen? And how do you explain to your father that I was making a left into the gate and I hit the left gate?
Oh man.
But that day I had to learn how a line works.
How did you tell him?
No, fortunately he didn't notice the fact that the bicycle was bent because I was pretty resourceful. So everything seemed okay. I had a couple of scrapes, but that was normal. So it was okay. Yeah. But I was like, how stupid are you to make a left turn and crash into the left gate of a gate? I mean, how do you do that?
Oh crap.
Right?
Okay, great one there. Because that's again the comfort factor, right? New situation, you have to learn.
Yeah.
Right? You don't know how it's going to behave. This is true for a vehicle that you may have ridden extensively, but you're now riding or driving on a new road.
Yeah.
It's rain, but it's a new road. You don't know it well enough.
Correct.
Take time to get comfortable.
Even if you have the same bike as your friend and you're borrowing your friend's bike, give yourself 10 minutes to just make sure it works like yours.
100%.
Oh yeah, something happened to you?
Haven't I told you? Nikhil Bhatia, right? At Autocar. So I was borrowing his bike to go from the Autocar office to the Bloomberg office. So this was from the other side of Parel to this side of Parel. And I borrowed his Pulsar. I don't remember what Pulsar it was. He just got from Pune to Mumbai, and I said, I need to go to the office quickly. So he said, just take my bike. And I was like, cool, Pulsar, no problem. You're in and out of these motorcycles all the time. So I took it and I went. And it was under that flyover near, basically one of the flyovers on Tulsi Pipe Road. And the light was red. It turned green, got going, left. And somebody ran out ahead of me. It was not a panic situation whatsoever, right? I just had to brake slow a little bit. That would be it. But the next thing I know is I'm looking up at this car. I'm like, what happened? And literally there's a gap between me noticing that I need to react to me looking up at this guy. My mind just shut all of those parts out because I don't think it could have made sense of it. I just literally touched the brake and that's it. And later I picked up the bike, went to office, looked at it, and then I spoke to Nikhil and I'm like, Nikhil, how long has this bike been standing? He's like, very long. The tires are fully cracked, right? So even though it was the same motorcycle that we would have ridden so many times, and you thought it was all okay, but that little thing, just gave up on me.
Yeah.
In an
No,
instant.
and remember, all of us testers, I think, do the same thing, which is when you get a new vehicle to test, you don't go fast immediately at all, ever. You will always take the time to establish things one by one by one.
Great point.
Right? So if I have a new test vehicle today, I will first, as I roll out of the office, make sure the clutch friction zone is in a place that I recognize, because my last friction zone might be ahead or before that. So I will release clutches differently, and sometimes it can be very annoying because my bikes are set up perfectly. They're always bang in the middle where I like them, but obviously on a test bike, I can't guarantee this. Sometimes they're very late, sometimes they're early, and there is friction there. Next, I will check the brakes and I'll start with the rear. How effective is it, so that I don't lock it up inadvertently? And
I think we should talk about this clutch friction point a bit more.
Okay, so yeah, go for it.
Yeah, like I think for newer riders or anybody getting comfortable with a new motorcycle, the first thing you can do is this. Yeah, get used to where the power comes in naturally. So you're not overworking the engine. The typical thing, right, when anybody is new and getting comfortable, is that rev.
Lots of revs and slowly release the clutch until it goes. Yeah.
Correct. And that means it can be either too urgent or you bog the engine, stall it.
Correct.
The easiest thing to do is just release the clutch gently, as slowly as you can, so you understand at what point the clutch is biting and you're getting drive.
And if you're revving engine that much when you're releasing the clutch, nobody in the vicinity will think of you as a skilled person.
Correct.
It is the sign of a newbie. And to me, if I'm taking a bike out the first time, let's say the friction zone is really far away, I will rev it out. But I promise it will happen the first time, maybe the second time, the third time I will know exactly where it is, and I will never rev the engine out like that ever again.
Absolutely. So that would be if you're looking to get comfortable with any vehicle. And like Shumi was saying, for us this has become second nature. So we won't even think about it when we are with a new vehicle, because this is what we've been doing for the last 20 years, getting in and out of different vehicles.
Correct.
And getting comfortable with them.
Correct. Second point, you can adjust the vehicle to you, don't adjust to the vehicle. Okay. So for example, if you're moving from your previous motorcycle to a new one, or an old car to a new one, you can get your friction zone adjusted to where you like it, which is the best way to do it. Don't say, oh, this one is longer, so I will get used to it. Why should you? The adjustability was built for you to use, and there is a manufacturer's spec to this too. You should be in the comfort zone between these two things rather than whatever it happens to be, because remember, we are not a country that does PDI super cautiously. So nobody's setting up the clutch exactly correctly. Most dealerships will not even check your tire pressures, which is critical. Right? Most journalists don't check tire pressures today when we go out for test rides, although we do, for example, right? These are things that you can do to help yourself. I am telling you, the more careful you are with tire pressures alone, it will change your riding and driving experience, because they are such a critical element of what happens next. Right? So clutch is the first thing that you do. Second, I would check my rear brake first. I don't want it to be in a situation where I'm constantly activating ABS. I want to be able to use it so that just before ABS intervenes, I know where that is, and I don't want to use any more of that than that. And as a skilled person on a motorcycle, you won't use your rear brake too often anyway. Like at the racetrack, I only use it when I'm feeling like the bike is becoming unstable, because I've got so much front brake on that the rear is feeling a little wild. I will use my rear brake. That's it. On smaller bikes, I never use the rear brake at the racetrack at all. In the city, I barely use it. Then I will very slowly and very gently go into the front brake to see where are we at. Does it have bite? How does it react? How much force does it give? And how much feedback does it give? Feedback to me is the least critical here because there is ABS. If ABS wasn't there, feedback would be a lot more critical. Right? Once you've figured out how to stop well is when you can start to go fast. Until then, there is no point. I'll give you an example of this. My first RD350 I got, the disc brakes, the drum brake shoes weren't there. It was khali drum. And the guy warned me. He says, "Aap run in kar rahe ho. So it shouldn't be a problem. But I'm telling you, there are no drums in the front." I said, "Why not?" He says, "They've gone for making because you had to make the
shoe.
So there was some leather treatment kind of thing and it was in the process." He says,
Yeah, they would take the old shoe and fit the.
Correct. So he says that
abrasive
shoe will
material.
come in a few days' time.
Oh.
Today there is no shoe. And I was too eager and excited. I said, "Yeah, but I just bought this bike, so I should take it out for a spin." He says, "Yeah, look, you've got a brand new engine and no front brakes at all. You should be okay because you're only running it in, right?" My God, the first half an hour was scary because you do this and it just come back and there was no braking coming from it and it was only at the rear and the rear doesn't slow down the motorcycle by that much, right? So I thought running in is slow. We'll be okay. RD350, not slow.
Man, and heavy.
Yeah. So it was like, oh crap, hit the rear brake and hope that it stops before. And I did this for 2 days before I said, okay, this is like, it's just not going to happen.
And they used to have those square type tires, right? And so like if you were anything other than straight, the bike would then start moving.
Yeah. So I did all of that for 2 days before I said, okay, this is beyond my skill level. I'd never ridden a motorcycle that fast. Don't have a front brake at all of any sort. Managing with the rear, this is not fun anymore.
Okay.
So until I got my front drums back, and those leather shoes actually worked quite well, unless they got wet, in which case they became on-off. Until that time, it was very scary. So to me, clutch, then brake, and only then can you start doing the rest of it. And the rest of it is, everything has to be settled into your method one by one. How does the suspension behave? Am I comfortable? Even if you're not comfortable, can I predict it? How does the engine make performance? How does the gearbox work? And you build that time. And in our case, we switch, 15 vehicles a month, 10 vehicles a month. So it's easier for us because we just do the switching between vehicles a lot. You won't. So my point is, I think taking that time to get used to your vehicle fully, especially when it's brand new, is important.
Okay, I'm going to keep extracting stuff out of what you're saying. Brakes. Again, we find it much easier to exert our influence on a vehicle in terms of gas, right? The more important thing would be actually to use the brakes effectively.
Yeah.
How hard and how well a vehicle can stop is more important to you than how hard it can accelerate. And how hard you think and how well a vehicle can actually brake is far more than what most people believe is possible.
Correct. That's why the 5 stars, no?
Back to 5 stars. So,
that's when you don't know how to brake.
and honestly, most of the people who are relying on that being their line of defense get into that trouble for sure because they are not actually learning the vehicle and how to use it better. Brakes, that factor, especially on motorcycles, what you believe is possible in the wet with modern day motorcycles and modern tires is far more than anything you have imagined. To get to know that, because not to go faster, but to be more comfortable. Do it in places and do it in short space, like tests, so to speak. Like I'm using this stretch, I will brake from this speed to this speed.
Yeah.
Just build that sense of comfort. You'll be amazed by what the machines can do today.
Correct. And in fact, in the pre-ABS era, I would do one emergency full stop every day.
Oh, every day?
Every day. So my commute was from Thane to Worli, 35 odd kilometers.
Wow.
Mostly straight. I had great fun doing this commute. People say, no, it's just straight, it's just traffic. I love traffic. And I don't mind the straights at all. And I was lucky, right? I had 13, 14, 18 motorcycles to test and there was nobody else testing. So it was just me. So I would do one panic stop every single day. So in the Vikhroli where the service lane is, that point of time, the service lanes were reasonably empty. Today, they are being used as regular traffic. So it's a lot busier now. Every day, you would go into the service lane, wet, dry, dirty, didn't matter. Especially with long-termers, because long-termers, the liability of, oh, it fell, we can't shoot anymore is much lower. And at that point, I didn't have any bikes of my own to do this with, so it was fine. Every day, one full emergency stop. Come to a place and say, okay, stop. And then all the braking force, all the skill has to be used, and you have to be able to stop without falling and without stalling. Right? But when actually you needed it, the muscle memory of that was already there. There was no ABS, but also there was no lockup.
That's one hell of a way to wake up.
So the idea was, I'm going to need this at some point.
Yeah.
And if you're going to need it at some point, you can't imagine that the skill will arrive in your brain automatically the moment you need it. So you better have it. Today, ABS makes that whole process a heck of a lot simpler.
Again, your machines can do a lot more than you imagine. Get comfortable with the idea of pushing them to that point in your comfort zone, because when you need it, the day you need it, it's not going to come announcing that today you will need emergency braking, right? It's going to turn up. You should have the confidence and the faith to do that.
Correct.
That is what when you have that, I think that's a great one. That is when you know that you're a good driver, good rider, because you've prepared yourself for that.
Correct. Yeah. And to me, I still think of motorcycle riding as a matter of practice. I like the idea that doctors practice medicine. Okay, I love the concept. It means he's not perfect and he's still figuring it out. And if you read how medicine works today, a lot of it is figuring it out. I think motorcycles and cars are the same. Will we ever become awesome drivers? Possibly. Are we there yet? Oh, heck no. Is there opportunity to learn? Yes. Which is, to me, good is a starting point. Good is not an arrival point. You should be a good driver or rider. But from there, you should work consciously towards growing, especially if you like the lifestyle. Because when you're good at driving and you're thinking about how to go better, what you can learn from it and what rewards you get from it are insane.
So two different coins. So he will easily say, I'm a good driver, I'm a good rider, and I will hesitate the heck out of it before saying I'm a good rider, good driver. And again, my my approach in that is, you gotta be cautious, man. If you start getting cocky, you'll get in trouble, right? So most of the times, I'm gonna say just that line. I'm not terrible. I'm not terrible. I'll be better, but I'm not terrible. So be cautious. Sorry, I'm going to go back to the RD. A motorcycle that intimidated people not just because of its performance, but also because of its weight.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, a question that a lot of people grapple with when they are getting used to their now newer, bigger motorcycles. How do you get comfortable with that?
Well, first, accept that you're going to fall off. You don't have to fall off to prove it to yourself. But first, accept falling off is real. And you do whatever you can to prevent the falling off, which at the easiest level, perhaps not monetarily the smartest way to do it, but the easiest way is to buy more gear or buy better gear. That's one way to say, if I fall off, not much will happen. That's protection number one. Protection number two, do the things you need to not fall. So for example, most of the time, our skills start to run out when we start to get fast. Why? Because the brain doesn't have the ability to process what's going on at the same pace that it did, say, 10 kmph slower or 5 kmph slower. And you've just lost the ability because you're going too fast. If that's happening to you, go slower. Go slower until the brain says, now I have familiarized myself with this process so much that now I have the space to accommodate another 5 kmph. Then you go 5 kmph faster. And here I will take Kartikeya's point again about being comfortable. When we teach people to ride at the racetrack, we don't tell them to push themselves. We tell them to get comfortable. We tell them to relax. And honestly, you can't relax unless you're going at a pace you're comfortable with. You cannot do it. Okay? If you feel like I'm going too slow, you'll be tense because you'll be saying, how do I go faster? And I can't find a way. So you're not relaxed. And if you're going too fast, which happens a lot at the racetrack because so many of the usual restrictions to going fast have been removed, especially visually, then you have this constant feeling of a little bit of fear or a little bit of thrill depending on your risk appetite. That's not comfortable either. So what you want to be is plugged into the experience and feel like you're in as much control as possible of the experience, and therefore you are comfortable. And people who can ride and drive in their comfort zones a lot are better drivers than people who regularly exit their comfort zones, either by going too slowly or going too fast.
Cool.
So to go back to the weight issue, I think it's a very simple thing. First, remember, you will get used to stuff. Okay? There was a time when you were not used to eating solid food. And today, if I were to feed you semi-solid baby food, you would react. You got used to eating solid food. There was a time before you knew how to ride a motorcycle at all. But now you're struggling to say, how do I ride a larger motorcycle than the one I'm used to? So first, remember, progress happens. And sometimes progress only needs time. If you just do more of it, then you won't notice so much of it, right? Think about it like this. Let's say that your struggle is you're riding a 200cc motorcycle of some description. and you win a 800cc motorcycle of some description, will the fear of falling off and its weight stop you from riding your brand new lottery motorcycle? So technically there is no barrier here at all. This is just in your head. Now, imagine I made it worse for you and I said this motorcycle will be taken away from you if you don't put 1,000 kilometers every month. Right? So here's your free motorcycle. It's 800cc. It is 600 kilos, let's call it. Let's have lots of fun with it. But you have to ride it 1,000 kilometers a month, because if you don't, I take the bike back. Now you'll ride that bike now every day. One way or another you ride it. You think you'll notice the weight of it 3, 4, 5 months down the line? It's just that. Take your time, get used to and learn it.
So on this, I have some, because I'm shorter and I did worry about the weight initially.
I'm not saying you won't worry. I'm saying you persist with it.
So what I ended up with a couple of hacks that I would do. Initially, I used to do them actively to get comfortable with a vehicle that was, let's say, big, heavy. Was a couple of things that I did at standstill, right? One of them was to just get on the bike, take it off the stand, move it back and forth, get a feel for the weight. The other thing I would do, which is a bit stupid, but was to get a sense of what it feels like when it's tipping over. So I would actually take it off center, take it down as much.
Until you couldn't handle the weight anymore, then bring it back. Yeah.
Right? So mentally, what I'm doing is I'm prepping the brain with data points saying that till this point you can manage.
Yeah.
So in case
It's
you
not a
do
crisis.
tip, till this point you'll be okay. Right?
Yeah.
That also builds your confidence with that bigger, heavier motorcycle as it may be, right? And often taller vehicles as well. The other thing was weight-wise. This is a stupid one, I know, but it somehow works. Finding the balance point. You'd be off the motorcycle and you just pick it off the side stand. I would just do that to get a feel for where it is that starts feeling sweet. And that just helped me connect with the motorcycles in terms of the size and weight a little bit better.
Yeah.
The other thing that I used to worry about motorcycles and that tipping over angle was U-turns, right? So when you don't know how much lock you have and then the power. So the clutch, getting comfortable with the clutch was important.
Yeah.
So we talk about figure of 8 being a very simple exercise and almost stupid. But if you can actually just run a figure of 8 as tight as you can on any bike while feeling smooth without getting too much clutch activation and all, you will find a very sweet balance, right? In terms of the connection with the motorcycle.
You would.
So I would do circles actually. I used to do circles one way, do the other way. Just so you get used to the idea of locking the steering. How far can you go? How do you maintain it then again with the accelerator and clutch so that you're getting some kind of a smooth movement. You're not going to get it smooth straight away. 100% not.
Yeah, but it's worthwhile.
It just gets you familiarized, smooth, and the tougher bits, then you are kind of prepared for them.
Yeah. When I have a really large outsized car, I do similar hacks. Okay. One of the hacks I've used a lot is when I get a new car, and let's say it's a X5, it's a big car. I will only worry about one side of the car. Once I have established that both sides will fit. So let's say it's a narrow gate that I have to go through. First, I will say, will it go through or not? Which is a judgment. And my judgment might say, if I fold the mirrors, it will be easier. Or if I don't have to fold the mirrors, there will be space left over. Once I'm convinced that this will fit, then I don't try to monitor both sides of it because that is too complicated a process. I just do one side. And you pick whichever side you're happy about.
Superb.
Yeah. So if I'm happy with my left, I will only monitor my left. And I will adjust my rear view mirrors, etc. until I'm totally aware of that side. And same for right. But if I pick right, I am not worried about the left. If there is traffic, I will make sure left is clear. But outside of that, I'm not watching the space for the left because it comes along with the right in a very predictable configuration. You don't have to watch both sides. I see people reversing even in small cars, and the most confusion they cause for themselves is by trying to monitor all four corners. But remember, in geometry terms, the four corners are in the same place the whole time. So you have to figure out how many of these corners you need to get to fit, and the other two or other three will come along with it. And that's all there is to it.
Superb.
Yeah. When I'm driving in a really narrow road, like in Germany, there was a forest section. We were in a Porsche 911, in a Boxster. Okay. Super narrow, supposedly one way. But they warned us saying not everybody follows the rules because there's nobody to enforce it here. So sometimes people go up to the viewing point and come back because the other exit is too long. Okay, fair enough. It's deep in the middle of the forest, nowhere close to civilization. Armco on both sides. But you want to go fast. I mean, you're there to test the Boxster, right? I only checked Will it fit? Yes, it will. How do I know? People ahead of me have already gone down this road in a Boxster, so I know this will fit. And then I said 4 inches from the Armco on this side is all the space that I need. And for the rest of the drive up that road, all I did was make sure that I was 4 inches or more from this side, and I was in a sweet spot. I never looked at this side of the car. It wasn't important.
Superb. Yeah.
Yeah. So when you have a big car, a lot of people will say, "Oh, I can't see the end of the bonnet." The real problem. But that should only happen to you once. And that one time, what you should do is go into your parking. Let's say there's a wall in front of your parking. Park where you think it's right. Then go and see how much space is left. And you'll discover, okay, there's maybe 2 or 3 feet of extra space left. Move forward one more time. It's okay. Go back. Oh, okay. Now you've reduced the space in front, but you have a sense of it, right? There are people who I know who are skilled people who will use the beeps until it becomes continuous, the proximity sensor. So it'll go beep, 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 beep. At the beep, they will get out the first time and see how much space is left and are they happy about it or not. And some of them will not be. Then they will move the car another 2, 3, 4 centimeters forward. Once this car is in the configuration that you like it, then you want to see how various visual elements of the car intersect with features of that garage. Right? So for example, some of the stilt parkings have half paint, right? The half the wall is white and the rest of the wall is black or yellow or whatever, right? How much of that is visible above the bonnet at what distance is a calculation that becomes embedded. And you're not parking with the proximity sensor anymore. You're going up to the point where whatever, 1 inch of the black border is visible above the bonnet. That means there is 10 centimeters in front of the car. We are done for the day. You do this 2 times with a new car, you will never think about parking again.
I'm going to connect this back to the bike conversation then. Slow, right? There is no shame in getting out of your car to check how much space you have remaining.
Yeah.
And people today, I know we have 360-degree cameras and we have reversing cameras, but you don't have to have them. They aren't the default. We lived without them for ages. I know parkings are getting smaller and all of that is more chaotic, but you can manage. And this is the trick. You just have to get out every now and then until you're comfortable with the car.
Yeah.
Once you have the size mapped into your brain, and it's amazing what the brain can map in. After that, you will be able to park.
Yeah, on the dot every single time without thinking about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and to me, driving is exactly the same. It's a matter of figuring out where you are, how much space do you have, and the largest mistake people make is not anticipate enough. Okay, what are you anticipating? Time and distance. Okay, by distance, I mean, for example, there's an intersection coming up. It's still green. You're trying to anticipate whether you're going to have to need to stop because it will turn yellow or red at the last minute, or are you looking like it is going to be okay and I can get through this intersection? At which point do you want to add more throttle or not is a decision you have to make. So for example, I know that if I'm approaching an intersection, I can see the intersection, I can see the green, and the clock on the intersection reads 10 seconds. I've literally got all the time in the world. Without accelerating, I will get through that intersection. At 3 seconds on the clock, maybe I want to abandon the idea that I will get there and it will still be green. It's just no point. But if I hit the brakes at that point, somebody else is going to try and make that 3 second. So hitting the brake hard may not be a good idea. Lighting up your brakes may be a great idea, but you're no longer on the throttle. And once you're sure nobody else is trying to make those last 3 seconds, then you can come to a stop normally. I have anticipated time and distance in 2 directions, front and back. Right? Do you want to jump a yellow? I will only jump a yellow if there's somebody behind me who's definitely going through the yellow and my stopping is not going to stop him. And they're definitely coming into me. Then I will pass a yellow. I will do this in the middle of the night on a red too, as illegal as it is. If I can stop, I will stop at the edge of the road knowing I'm not in anybody else's way who is about to break this traffic light, because I'm not here to teach them anything. I just want to get to the other side. But if I happen to be in the middle of the road, it's suddenly turned yellow, and I see somebody coming behind who's completely unlikely to stop, it's just safer for me to go through the red. I have to anticipate time and distance the whole time. And you know the problems that I cause for myself? I memorize roads, okay? I've always done it, which is I'm very good with directions. I can go back to a place years later and find the place again. But the process is I memorize my roads. So for example, my commute today is from Powai to our office here in Turbhe. I know every single pothole, every single change of camber, every single patch, every single concrete slab that is not quite seated, etc., etc., etc. It's a very detailed, very painstakingly built database. So when it goes underwater in the rains, I know where what is. Okay, so I know that this patch of water is on top of concrete. It cannot get deeper, at least not suddenly. And I know that that patch is on dirt and therefore it can get seriously deep. So I know all of these roads like this. But in the wet,
Does anybody want Shumi maps?
I have to remember that I can't use them as I could in the dry because people are not going to use the roads the same way. For example, I know that under that pothole in front of you is just 2 inches of water and then concrete and absolutely no crisis. The auto guy in front of me doesn't know it. And the auto guy might decide to swerve out of the way or at least move enough to make sure that the water passes between the front wheel and the left wheel or the right wheel or something. He'll make a change of direction. I have to anticipate that too. So in the rain, I have to be a lot more cautious knowing that there's no actual hazard there, but people will see hazards there and things will happen.
So anticipation.
To me, patience, anticipation and being comfortable are the 3 components of all good driving and all good riding. Okay, no matter how much of an emergency you're in, going faster is not the solution. Okay, there was an actual emergency where I think my wife had to be taken to the hospital early in the morning. We had a Baleno from the office with us. And it was just before office traffic, so it wasn't very busy. I don't remember driving faster. I remember driving really well. And driving really well saved us 6.5 or 7 minutes over a 15 kilometer commute, which is a massive big deal. But could it be done if I drove faster? No.
You're running more risks.
In traffic, if you're going faster, you're just taking a bigger risk. There is no other way to go faster in traffic. And the guys who take risks don't always get faster either. Right? You know this, right? You've been in traffic and there's been somebody who's standing out from the crowd because they're riding so poorly. And they are the guys changing lanes and jinking and all of this kind of dramas going on. And somehow they're always there. Right? At the first intersection, they're there. Second intersection, they're there. 10 kilometers later, they're still there, still doing the same thing. Which means what? You're not doing anything and they're not achieving anything. It's obvious who's the better rider here. It gets even worse when you get past them. And then you can see them continue to do stuff behind you and you've just gone away from them, right?
Yeah.
So to me, patience, anticipation, and the feeling of being comfortable is the key to being a good driver. The more often these 3 things connect for you and settle into the pattern, the better the chances you're a good driver or a good rider. And to me, if you have near misses, any at all, often enough, something is wrong with your driving. And there is a room there for you to improve something.
Right.
If you actually have incidents, and incidents could be as small as backed into a pole, scratch somebody else's car, taking it out of parking onwards, all of these count as bad driving. If you have lots of electronic intervention showing up as you drive or ride, that's a bad sign too. Okay, so I ride a 170 bhp Ducati every day throughout the year. I barely get traction control intervention, which I'm not expecting. I am using it now. Okay, I've gotten comfortable with it. And the rear tire used to be 200 section on my previous Ducati. It's now 170 because this is a more off-roady setup, as it were. So it kicks sideways much earlier on the exit of a corner. I have learned to rely on traction control. So I've taken traction control down. I let it spin a little bit, so it will be slightly sideways before it comes out, and I feel comfortable with it. It has never surprised me though. Right? My Ducati also has blind spot warnings. I am not surprised by my blind spot warnings. I know my blind spot already. To me, these are good signs. If you can tell that, oh, now traction control lights will come on your car, in your bike, that's a good sign. It means you're plugged into the experience, you know what's about to happen. Should it happen a lot without you expecting it, that's a bad sign. What would you do?
About electronics?
Yeah.
They should be your safety net, not the default. I think with cars, you have a lot more weight on your shoulders.
Yeah.
So you don't want to get into a situation where that is you're running through your safety net.
Correct.
So you leave that as your cushion as much as possible. So whether it's brakes, which is why being familiar with the brakes is important. The other thing that actually, you spoke about blind spot. Situational awareness, I think in cars, and especially when motorcyclists transition into cars, becomes a challenge.
Yeah.
And that is a question of patience. It is a question of just taking time to get familiar with the vehicle, right? You can do it better. There's no two ways about it. The thing that people in cars tend not to do, and this is a really funny thing that I've noticed, is to actually maneuver.
Yeah.
To look around.
Yeah, it's crazy.
people will not do that.
Yeah.
It's like you're only meant to look through the windscreen, right? Or look straight back. No, you can turn your head around. And this is a small but stupid thing to say, but it's happened to me as well. The when I learned about this, I realized that I was not doing it enough. Was I'd gone for Gaurav Gill. He used to have this thing called the Gill Drill, right? It was a rally school, and this was in Bengaluru, outside way back. This was ages ago. And we were doing a slalom in off-road conditions, right? It was slushy, it was grassy, it was super slippery, full stop. And he's told us to do the slalom in this off-road scenario, and we're doing it. Okay, fine. And then when you go do that with Gil, you're looking at the cone out of the side window.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, the car's turned that far away that the only way to actually plan for the next bit is by looking at it through that window. And you will need this if you're driving in the mountains, if you're driving in tight, narrow spaces. You have to do this.
Yeah.
You're doing a hairpin, look that way. You don't just keep looking up ahead.
Yeah.
Right? Today's modern cars have big chunky A-pillars.
Yeah, massive.
They block your sense of situational awareness. They block off a lot of your view. At an intersection, it should just be normal for you to do this, which is to look past the A-pillar.
Yep.
Make sure there's nothing there, because it's very easy to hide. Motorcycles, cyclists, pedestrians.
Cars can
behind.
disappear.
Even cars. On some, 100%.
Cars
it
can
can
disappear.
happen. ORVMs are large. So getting comfortable with the vehicle size and the possibility of other objects being close to you will come with time. You can improve your visibility of the surroundings by just moving around a bit yourself.
Yeah, and on a motorcycle, the Americans call it a lifesaver. And a lifesaver is basically one physical check before you make a direction change. Okay, so you will look over your shoulder. Even if you've indicated, even if your mirrors say nobody's behind you, you will check once directly into your blind spot to make sure you are clear before you make the direction change. When I get into a car, I am still doing lifesavers. I don't know how you can live without it.
Yeah.
Right? So if I'm going down the middle lane in a car and I want to go to the top lane, like when I was bringing the I-20 N line to the office, I'm the whole time.
Correct.
Because I'm so used to being on a motorcycle and not committing to a direction change before I do a lifesaver, that a lifesaver is no longer a thought process for me. It's just something that happens. So if I'm going to make one lane change, I start with the indicator, check all the mirrors on that side, and then that much. Make sure the blind spot is clear. Right? And the more chaotic the traffic is, the more the lifesaver will surprise you by what all can get into your blind spot without you noticing completely. Right? So if you're not used to turning your head in the car, please do. It's a critical thing. And the tighter the corner up ahead is, the more critical the situation up ahead is, the busier it gets, the more it is imperative that you're looking for a problem rather than assuming there is no problem. You're asking that question, saying, mere A pillar mein, is it hiding something from me?
There's nothing like this on a motorcycle, the helmet field of view.
No, it's too
But
big.
you're anyways always moving
No,
around.
and there are very few helmets that have such small fields of view that this is a problem. You would have a problem if you were, for example, bought a car racing helmet, put it on a motorcycle and decided to go for a spin. Then you would have a problem because they don't have very large field of views. Motorcycles, it's impossible to have a helmet that is so small. On a motocross helmet wearing goggles, you can restrict your field of view a little bit. But most street helmets, ADV's helmets are the biggest in terms of field of view. So this is not really a problem.
Okay.
In fact, at the racetrack, we have to remind people that you can turn your head more. Most motorcyclists will natively turn their heads. At the racetrack, they will forget how much they can turn their heads further, right?
You should see, MotoGP at some of the tracks, it's amazing. And the first time these things click in your head, when you see that, you're like, man, how could I miss this? Right? The bike is pointed here. You can see the curbs next to the rider. The rider's head is there. The bike is here, curbs are here, the rider's looking there. It's amazing. They've processed they've further down the road in their heads.
And if you drive with good riders and drivers, you'll always realize that the one thing that separates them from normal drivers is how far ahead they're looking. And it's not an easy skill. It's not something that settles into a comfortable pattern very quickly, but it is something that we all figure out if you have to go faster. Remember, the idea is you're, let's say, 2 seconds of your vehicle, mentally ahead of the vehicle by 2 seconds, 4 seconds, 5 seconds, whatever your number is. That at 10 kmph is a very different transaction from that at 100 kmph when you're cruising out on the highway. Are your eyes high enough in both situations determines whether you're a good driver or not. Okay, if you want to practice this, count the number of poles which you can see in the distance. Okay, when we were driving the Mont Blanc tunnel, which is a tunnel that goes under in the Chamonix area from France to Italy. So they have lights marked on the sides of the tunnel. There are 2 reds and then a blue, or 3 reds and a blue. And the idea is you always see 1 blue and 3 reds or 2 reds or whatever, so that you can maintain the correct gap to the truck ahead, because it's such a complicated tunnel that ventilation is why you can't be any closer, so that the exhaust fumes can't rise above a certain point. And when I did that, I remembered that this is how I learned to maintain vision before I went to the racetrack, and it became more natural to me. Right? So I'd say I want to see 3 poles ahead. So my eyes are fixed 3 poles ahead. And that 3 poles is connected to the fact that I'm 100 now. If I slow down to 80, then maybe that 3 becomes 2.5. And the first time you do it, there's a lot of attention that needs to be paid to this activity, so you can't go as fast as you normally might. Once it becomes patterned, then you sort of in the background know, I'm not looking far enough ahead. You know, they say the 2-second rule, where the car should be 2 seconds ahead of you, it's very difficult to implement. When you learn it though, then it's very hard to get away from it. Right? I've been in a ton of cars where the driver's not following the 2-second rule, which I normally might. And then my feet are going into the firewall harder and harder because I just want more space here, and I'm visually not feeling like there's enough space here.
That's a good one. Yeah. Again, give yourself room.
Yeah, and if you're a driver, also notice whether the passenger is doing this, because that's a sign that they're getting uncomfortable. Right? I've driven with 2 of my former colleagues who are both excellent drivers, but the gaps that they maintained are too small for my liking. So I couldn't do anything in those cars except for like brace. And I'd be and at one of them, he's a terrific driver. There's no issues with his driving at all, but not a very patient driver. And I am increasingly a very, very patient driver. I have no interest in going fast in cars, especially in traffic. So I'd be like braced the whole time. Imagine doing Pune-Mumbai like this. And he was oblivious because he is just a good driver, right? So to him, it is like, yeah, it's open here, it's open there. And he's making 3-4 lane changes going through. I was like, I cannot do this.
Awesome.
The irony of it is, I'm not that great a driver compared to this person. I drive a lot more patiently. We drive within 5-8 minutes of each other. So all of that effort that he put in was more for his joy than actually achieving anything.
Yep.
What else?
I think with cars, this is not rocket science. I think we've broken it down into the 3 facets that people should look for. I mean, think about as ideas that they can work with, and giving yourself time, whether it's to slow down or to get familiar, or to get comfortable, is key. And in cars, I know you will think of machines as infallible or universally equal in terms of how they will behave, right? Let me give you an example. A car, a 7-seater, an SUV, will not behave like, let's say, a Fortuner is not going to drive like a Creta. A Fortuner is not going to drive like a Fortuner if it has 7 people and luggage on board.
Yeah.
Right? How it behaves, the thresholds that you leave for yourself as buffers should vary as well.
Yep.
Depending on those conditions. It's just a question of getting enough data in your brain with a particular vehicle in different conditions for you to become a good driver.
Yeah.
And then only one little condition needs to change and you'll back to questioning yourself, am I good enough to do those same things in this scenario? That's, I think, for me, the golden rule, which is why, and you were talking about lifesavers, and we spoke about this in one of the previous eps, where no matter what, right, when I'm on the highway going to overtake, if I've even the smallest doubt, I will roll out. I'll just give myself that half a second. And that's enough to assess, is it worth it to go for this or not?
Correct.
Right? Because you may have a feeling that there was something there, was something crossing, is something
and that intuition is super powerful. Do not ignore it.
Yeah. It's okay. You can overtake after 30 seconds. Yeah. It's not a big deal.
Yeah.
So giving yourself time for those thoughts as well is important.
Yeah.
And
I'm telling you, this intuition thing is a very powerful thing. I know at least 5 separate incidents where I have suddenly made a direction change, and then I have felt like whatever was beside me made the direction change after I had already initiated evasive maneuvers. But if I hadn't, they would have hit me. But it has happened so natively that it feels like I moved first and they made their mistake after I had already moved.
Shucks. Wow.
Yeah. Right? And you know why? You know how that happens? And that's the one thing that we've still not talked about. And that is time. You have to do a lot of driving and a lot of riding to become a better version of yourself behind the wheel or behind the handlebar. There is no way around this. Okay, you cannot decide that I will only drive on the weekend recreationally and out on the highway and become a better driver. It is nearly impossible to do. Take a car, put 10,000 hours behind the steering wheel, you'll become a better driver. There's no way around this. Whether you do it by making a series of mistakes and having lots of incidents, or you do it by figuring out how to contribute to keeping mistakes and incidents away from you, it's both methods will lead to the same place. Give it 10,000 hours, you'll be a good driver. There's no way around it.
I'm sorry, I'm laughing. But yeah, that's absolutely 10,000 hours is the rule. I considered myself to have passed the real driving test. Was this one time. I call it, you can think of it as the Shalu Didi test. Shalu Didi is my cousin. She's elder to me. And she was like the toughest sister you could have, right? She was my tennis coach and all of that. She was really good at it. Anyways, the point is that she was my teacher at one point. So with me, obviously her trust levels would be lower because
Correct.
I've always been the disciple, right? So when I started driving, she was visiting Pune and my grandmom was also there. And you can imagine how nervous she was about getting into a car that I was driving.
Correct.
And the funny thing is, my grandmom is sitting in the front seat. Shalu Didi is sitting in the back seat. And even before we started off, she's like, Kartik, tu dheere chalana, tu bahut tez chalata hai, tu aisa mat karna, waisa mat karna. I'm like, Didi, I've not even started driving. Can you calm down? She's like, no, you be careful, huh? I've got daughters now, you can't take risks. She's like that, completely bad. So we got out and we used to stay in Pashan Road. So it was like not much traffic. So, but narrow road, getting out, then we got onto the main road. And I'm just driving chill, okay? And then after some time, I said, Didi, and this is, I'm talking about early 2000s, right? And I think we must have been in a Fiat or at the very most, what did we have back then? I think it was a Fiat. So it's not like a quiet, smooth, modern car or something like that. Right? It would be noisy.
Yeah.
And we got onto Pashan Road and at one point I'm like, Didi, we are at 80 kilometers now. Kartik, देखो मैंने बोला था धीरे चलाना. So that was, I said, see, you didn't feel it.
Yeah.
It's only when I told you that we are going this fast, you were like, go, slow down. So that day I considered, okay, now I passed because Didi could relax.
Correct.
She was sitting in the back seat, chilling. My grandmom was in the front, completely unbothered.
Yeah, no stress. Yeah.
So in this, what I'm saying is, you may have people who are critical of you. But if you can put them at ease with your driving, they can feel comfortable with you. You would have come a long way.
Yeah.
Right? Because you're being able to instill trust in somebody else with what you're doing, and they're completely not in control in that situation. So if you can get to that, I think you're golden.
Yeah, absolutely. No, and with passengers, the whole game changes, right? To me, there was a couple of weeks in here where I was ferrying a colleague of mine who stays in the next building. So we're coming to office together, come with me. And she got a helmet, she got a jacket, she was fully geared up. And the first day I rode the Ducati, I got here thinking I just did a terrible job because it was in full power mode with full reactions. So to me, it was terrible. To her, it was a Ducati with electronic suspension managing a lot of my idiocy. So she didn't feel it like that. But that evening, I changed all the settings. I changed the preload up one notch higher. I moved the throttle settings to be much more gentle. And then I was on best behavior on the way home. She told me, on that stretch, did you realize you went 110? That's illegal. I didn't do 110. She says, no, you did. I was watching over your shoulder. When did you say anything? I said, no, I felt completely comfortable. It wasn't like you were doing it in the middle of traffic. But did you realize how fast you went? I didn't. She was comfortable. That's a score. That's a victory. I felt confident. And I got off the motorcycle thing. I did a good job there. I didn't really have any jerks. There was no funny movement. I didn't have to brake too hard because something unanticipated. Correct. I think I nailed it. In the process of which, my mental speedometer took me way beyond what I would have normally done on that stretch. That is a great sign. That's also a warning, which means you're getting comfortable with the idea of doing something that is, say, 30 kmph over the speed limit, which means now you have to pay more attention to staying under it. But being able to unlock that is a great thing. It's something that I want to discuss in detail on a podcast. But I think the ability to go fast is critical for you to drive slowly well. The other way doesn't work. You can't unlock going fast one day because you decided I want to go fast today, right? But if you can learn how to be fast, then you can do slow with very little of your brain being used, so that a lot of your brain is aware and available when an emergency occurs. So I would like you to drive at 30% of your skill really well, rather than drive at 70% of your skill and struggle to make it happen. This is why when you drive with racers on public streets, they're not always slow or the most well behaved. But the control, the anticipation, and the neatness with which they get through traffic, I'm telling you, it's beggars belief. And they're barely functioning anywhere close to their ability, right? Because they're having a conversation with you.
Yeah. This was in season 1. We had discussed this one time I was driving up to Srinagar for the Mughal rally. And I met up with Hari Singh Hari Singh is a legend in that sense for India. And
Yeah, multi-time Indian rally championship winner.
National rally champion. And a super relaxed person. When you meet him, you'd think he'll be like this full aggro.
No, he's full chill.
Absolutely chill.
Yeah.
And so when we left from Chandigarh and we were driving up to Rajouri, or I don't remember now where we were driving up to. So there was one night halt. I was in an Endeavour, there was a Fortuner, there was something else. Well, there were a whole bunch of families traveling with Hari for this event. And I was one of the media guys there to come cover that, and I was going to drive this. So I had one car to myself, which I picked up from Chandigarh, and they had their couple of SUVs. And there were a bunch of kids, right? The families, they had their children along who were literally bachas. In which car did the kids go?
In Hari's car. Naturally.
Car.
Yeah.
Which car was the fastest?
Hari's.
Hari's
Naturally.
car. Which was the smoothest?
Yeah, also him.
The safest car was also the quickest, because the hands on the wheel
Correct.
were the most trusted, were the most composed.
Correct.
Right? I tried to follow him in the Endeavour, and he was, I think at that point, in the Fortuner with the kids in it. And he was like, I couldn't keep up with him. And when I stopped, I said, I couldn't follow you. So he's like, मैं तो तेज नहीं चला रहा था. I was like, okay, that's your not slow, right?
Correct.
So his skill level is way up there. So when he's driving, what is fast for me is his 30%.
Which, think about it, what that basically means is that Hari is actually driving at what Karthik thinks is an amazing pace while having a chat with the kids. That much brain power and skill is left over, right? And to me, I've said this before and I'll say it again, safer and faster to me are the same coin looked at two different ways. You can't do this without that. You can't do that without feeling like this, right? If you're not feeling safe, you're not going faster, you're just taking a bigger risk. This is how most of the people who go fast in traffic work today, unfortunately. Okay? You can only go fast when you're feeling confident and safe. There is no other way around it. This feeling can be false. That is a flag, which is what usually happens when you think, I'm a good driver, but you don't have any basis for it.
Not good.
No, the basis. Okay, the basis is I drive well. Everybody in my vehicle is usually comfortable. I have no real incidents to report. I park well. Everything says I am a good driver. And there is where my feeling of safety and comfort comes from, so I can go faster. Remember, the feeling of comfort has to remain. I'm comfortable going this kind of fast. If you can't achieve all of these things, you're not doing a very good job of driving right now, even if you're generally a good driver. And this can happen, okay? Mood swings happen. People get angry and upset and then they decide, I'll go for a drive and work this thing out. No, there's no emotion going into the car with you. There's no emotion coming onto the motorcycle with you. No matter how angry I get. When I'm on a motorcycle, I'm back in my zone of, I have a job to do and I have to survive this ride.
Okay. While you were talking about that, something else struck me. Music. Loud music. I would say don't.
Yeah.
Especially when you're getting familiar with a vehicle, getting familiar with a set of conditions. I would not do it. It's as simple as that. Because hearing is a very important part of your ability to perceive the environment around you.
Yeah.
And
sure.
if you can't hear what the car is doing, if you can't hear what's happening around you, and on a motorcycle, I know a lot of people like to just plug in, listen to music, but it's actually also disconnecting you from the environment.
Yeah.
And that is a tricky bit. And in a car, it becomes all the more important because you are effectively traveling in your private space.
Correct.
And you think I can crank up the volume and all of that. But every time I spend time with a car to get familiar with it, I will not have the music on. first I have to get a sense of the car before I get
Correct.
to listening to music and chilling out, because that is putting you in a different mind state.
Yeah.
It's taking away from building familiarity, building confidence to, hey, I'm already at ease.
Correct.
So the music in a way is going to put you in a false sense of confidence.
Correct. And music can affect your mood too. So
Yeah.
if you're listening to a lot of death metal, that's probably not helping you driving a lot, right? And the second thing about music is, to me, I'm on a motorcycle 99% of the time. When I pass a car where I can hear their music outside their car, I don't think of them as very well-adjusted, socially acceptable people, okay? I'm telling you straight away, I'm judging you at that point. Your music should be your music and it should happen inside your car. And if you have an electric vehicle with speakers and I can hear your music, then you are even worse than the car guy. At least the car guy had the decency to put the windows up and turn on the AC.
There are other bikes also with speakers on them. And it's
All of them.
Culturally.
All of them. If you have speakers and you can hear it outside, I'm sorry, but you're not doing a good job, because there is no reason for you to be inflicting your taste on other people. As it is, we have to accept you as a member of traffic, which we don't have a choice about because it's a free country and all of that, right? But to be able to say, ha, chori pasinas ho rahi hai, I will also play some random music which you now have to listen. I'm sorry, guys. I mean, there must be a better way to do this.
Yeah.
So I am very clear about this. If I'm playing music in the car, if I'm driving, it should be just loud enough for everybody inside to enjoy it and not loud enough for anybody else outside to be able to figure out what music is playing in my car. Yeah, on a bike, no music at all. And the final thing I want to say is the real way to learn this is still a school. And if you're a motorcyclist especially, and I'm only saying that because motorcyclists generally seem to be more interested in improving their skills than all other kinds of vehicle operators. If you are, a school is worth it. It's a lot of money. My school costs, I think we calculated last time, it's between 95 to 1 lakh rupees a weekend, including everything. Renting the bike, renting the leathers, the travel, the stay, and the tuition, etc., fuel, everything. It's 1 lakh of rupees, it's a lot of money. But I know that at the end of those 2 days with us, you will emerge a very different kind of rider in terms of first mindset, then skill set, and therefore what you do outside.
We spoke about this in the previous episode, that ABS is this lifelong insurance that you get with the vehicle. Going to a school like this is the same thing.
Yeah, and I'd like to sign off by telling you one more lesson from the racetrack, which is relax and take control. When they work together, it's magic.
Yeah. Super. My final statement for this would be for everybody, cars and bikes. You may be a good driver and rider, 100%, trust you on that. But every opportunity you get which feels unfamiliar, do question yourself. Do question the conditions, if nothing else, to give yourself the space and time to find the comfort to be safe there. Right? The passenger's angle. If you can find people to travel with you, who are happy to travel with you, you're in a good space. So if you're wondering about whether I'm a good rider, driver, whatever it is, you'll know it when you're traveling with people, if they enjoy traveling with you.
Yeah,
That's
easily.
a small, simple thing.
Easily.
And I messed it up with my dad.
Your best friends will let you know.
Yeah.
The people who don't let you know are not your best friends. What did you mess up?
My dad still won't let me drive when I'm with him. He'll be the one driving. Yeah. And I gotta win him over somehow. Yeah.
I just wanted to remind you that the next episode, the 10th episode, is halfway through the season. And we are discussing all the advice that you would have given to somebody else which you think will work. We brought this up in episode 8. We are bringing it up again because that's what we want to discuss the next time. So until you comment, I can't actually record the 10th episode. So it is critical, and it's a very simple idea. We know we all advise each other. Pick up the best advice you've given somebody that seems to have worked and leave it in the comment. We'll pick up 10, 12 of these interesting ideas and we'll discuss them on the 10th episode.
Zuba.
Yeah. Done. Are you ready? 3, 2, 1.
ThisConnect.
No, we didn't say it together.
Oh, sorry.
I was on purpose, actually. I was playing with you. We'll do it seriously this time.
Oh, I thought you wanted me to say 3, 2, 1.
Okay, you say 3, 2, 1 this time.
3, 2, 1.
ThisConnect.